aspiring to the greatness that you espouse over the video side, and
True,
I'm
true,
I'm trying. I'm trying.
true. By the way, before I forget, in regards to what we're talking about before we went hot, if you need any production help, if we can get something worked out for you, get a show going for you or something, you know, the emotional meatball is happy to help any way he can, bro.
Well, I appreciate that, and there's so much to be talked about and discussed that anything we can do to make that discussion, of a high quality, I'm all in.
You're gonna either make me feel really smart today or
Video side, and
true,
I'm
true.
I'm trying. I'm trying.
True. By the way, before I forget, in regards to what we're talking about before we went hot, if you need any production help, if we can get something worked out for you, get a show going for you or something, you know, the emotional meatball is happy to help any way he can, bro.
Well, I appreciate that, and there's so much to be talked about and discussed that anything we can do to make that discussion, of a high quality, I'm all in.
You're gonna either make me feel really smart today or really freaking stupid. One of the two. Let's roll the dice, man. Welcome, everybody. Hey, thanks y'all for y'all. Holy cow, dude! I said y'all. I don't say
All you,
y'all.
all you all is plural for everybody down in the South. I learned that living in Atlanta.
I tried talking Southern once and I got kicked out of the state. They said, "You ain't from around here, son." I said, "You're god dang right I'm not. Now give me a meatball."
When I moved down there from Chicago, I spent 9 seasons. I affectionately refer to them as up in Chicago, and my girls were born up there. We moved down to the South. I said, the first time any of you say all y'all, we're moving.
I'm smacking you in the face. Right in the face. I swear to God, I'll punch you. Don't you dare. And it's disappointing because there's not a lot of Italian restaurants down south.
Well, one of the things that I was really disappointed in, I moved from LA to Chicago. So I spent 28 years in LA, and the music scene, that's where I got my music indoctrination and baptism, if you will. And when I moved to Chicago, I said, well, it may be a cultural and environmental shock because it's, you're basically going from an idyllic place in Southern California to flat, rusted, brown, and broken up all over the place.
Right.
I said, well, at least they've got music up there. In downtown Chicago, I worked down there for about 4 or 5 years, and we had people coming in from all over the world. So I had great opportunities to take them to the blues clubs and the jazz clubs, and there was a lot of great music. Then I had the opportunity to move to the South, and I thought, well, at least they've got to have some great music down there. I was so disappointed.
Right.
I thought, there would be at least good blues, good jazz, and all that. And there's a few little places, Fat Matt's Rib Shack and a few others, but I was like, what happened? Why don't you guys have great music down here? You had to go out of Atlanta, and that's one of the things they told me was, they said, you got to realize that there's Atlanta and then there's Georgia.
Right. Brother, we got to roll. We got to roll.
Right.
I have no idea, dude, where we're going. I'm just bringing this in, and we're going to do what we do because we're freaking professionals here, all right?
That's right.
All right, here we go. And unfortunately, because of Skype, you're not going to hear the intro music, but it works on everything else, which pisses me off. But here we go, brother. We're hot in 5, 4, 3.
Midnight. Live from an undisclosed location somewhere in North America, Rocky Stucci is in the Situation Room.
Well, I told Brother Bauer before we went live, ladies and gentlemen, I said this conversation is going to go one of two ways. You're either going to make me feel really freaking smart, or you're really going to make me feel really freaking stupid. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program, Rocky Stucci's Situation Room, right here, Mojo 50 Radio, with, of course, me, the emotional meatball, the clown punisher, Rocky freaking Stucci. Welcome aboard. Hey, before, a couple quick things. Yesterday, Bauer, I did a show with Sir Tell a Lot of Stories, Scotty Roberts.
Yes, sir.
You know him, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Boy, that dude.
We've swapped swords now and then. Yes.
Dude, that dude tells some stories, man. We'll sit there, we'll start talking about like medical costs, and then he starts talking about Civil War reenactments, dude. It's the most confusing conversations we've ever freaking have. But
That's ADHD radio at its finest.
dude, it really is. But we're the professionals at that, bro.
That's
But
right.
so we had this conversation in regards to Julian Assange. Is he a traitor? Is he a criminal? Is he a hero? And I want to recognize somebody made a very profound case. We're being played as well during the day on Mojo 50 at 10 o'clock a.m. Central. It'll be this week. Don't know what's going to happen after this week. But Brandon's Jack Cole Cat. There's a whole different population of Mojo people during the day, the Jack Cole Nation. And it's a whole different world for me. I'm getting all these messages from people that I'm just now meeting because of the program being on during the day. So I just want to say welcome to everybody during the day. Thank you all for your support, your messages. What an amazing bunch of people. But in regards, I wanted to share what he wrote on Twitter in regards to Julian Assange, because a lot of what he said I agree with, and then we'll get on into the show here. But Brandon's Jack Cole Cat says, in regards to Julian Assange, at Rocky Stucci, anyone that expresses corruption or anyone that exposes corruption based on fact, regardless of political affiliation, is a hero, in my opinion. Information and knowledge is power, and as long as the people have that power, we can hold the corrupt to account. I think that's pretty spot on.
I think it's absolutely spot on. And I caught the show last night and saw some of the chat as well as your discussion with Scotty on this. I personally think that, when you have information that's exposed, that's information that was unknown prior to its being exposed, that information can take on a lot of different forms. It fits into this topic that we're calling the informatica that we'll get into. But you look at Assange, you look at Snowden, you look at Gary McKinnon, who a lot of people don't remember. It was, essentially about 20 years ago now. But here's a guy that was in England, and all he was doing was trying to find information on UFOs, right?
Yep.
So what did he do? He went out and he had enough computer skills to be able to find the servers on the networks and get into what were unpassword protected systems. What did he find in there? And he wasn't trying to do any espionage. He wasn't trying to expose anything other than he was doing his own research. So what did he find? All kinds of lists of off-world officers, different types of crafts and different resources that were being listed and managed within NASA's own computer network. And, there was for 2 or 3 years, there was an entire extradition effort that went on from the U.S. They were trying to get him over to put him into court and put him on trial. And it eventually went away from the standpoint of he never did get extradited. He's still a free guy and he's doing his own thing. But what did he find? He found information that was not as secure as it should be. And we're going to get into cybersecurity and cryptology and so forth in one of the future episodes on this informatica. But here was an example of data that was essentially freely available because it wasn't protected. And yet that data was extremely profound, especially in the UFO community. And it has also been very important in the secret space program and the off-world science that many just very credible researchers have been doing for a long time. Richard Dolan, Catherine Austin Fitts, Joseph Farrell. These guys have been digging deep into the data that's available and trying to not just expose it, but try to put some context around it, because content is really about the context of the way in which it's presented.
Right.
I think what Assange has done, what Snowden has done, has exposed information that a lot of people thought was probably in some way, shape, or form out there. But I think one of the most important things that people don't realize is that little, if any, of that information has been countered. People haven't come back and said, well, they exposed information that was all false, or it was made up, or the narrative was concocted
Of course.
to presented a certain way. The DNC emails. I mean, they got pissed because they got exposed, not because somebody took it and manipulated it to their advantage.
Right.
They just exposed the data. So I think that that's one of the most important things that people need to keep in mind when they think about, is it patriotism versus, some nefarious intent? And I don't think Assange and WikiLeaks is not, they're definitely not nefarious, in my opinion. I think they're just saying, hey, did you guys know that these people are saying and doing this? And when it's not refuted, then what's the retort? Well, we're just going to go on a binge and try to discredit these people or put some narrative around them that makes them less credible at a minimum.
You know, it's interesting because in the conversation we had yesterday, I was going to bring up Snowden, but I believe there is a different parallel with Snowden on what Snowden did in regards to Julian Assange. You know, and I think a lot of people uses Snowden to come up with their personal narrative when a lot of times I've seen information come forward where they claim Snowden said it and he really didn't. But then you go to somebody like WikiLeaks to where you can actually go back and validate everything that they have published, and yet not one thing they have published have ever been proven to be false.
Right, and that's the important thing is it's the data itself.
Yep.
When you have the ability to have access to that data, do your own analysis, your own observation, and come to your own opinions. That's what grows the social discourse. That's what expands minds and people being able to make their own decisions.
Right.
I mean, so much of the narrative in the social fabric, and we're going to get into one of the future shows, is the message in the medium.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a way in which the content is manipulated for certain purposes, and they can be both transformative and disruptive, which is what we were talking about in the first part of this series. Being able to discern that and have the tool set to navigate through it is vitally important, and it's not as difficult as some people think. There is a huge amount of information. Sifting through it, finding a way in which to filter the data that's important to you is one of the key things that we want to do in this series, is identify the content, how that content is manipulated and passed on, just from the standpoint of it being in its raw state.
Right.
But then what happens when people gather various components, put it into a context and a narrative that is designed to socially manipulate the minds and the feelings of the people that they're trying to target.
Right.
And it's amazing how simple it really is to filter through it so that you don't get all twisted around going, well, I thought this way about this, and now I think that way, and now I'm confused.
Right.
Confusion is okay. Cognitive dissonance, as much as people give it a lot of bad rap, is actually a good thing. When you can hold two opposing views at the same time in your mind, that's an important skill set. And it's a way to navigate through this tsunami of data that, we're just getting buried with.
And I think that's what overwhelms people the most, is trying to dissect through that tsunami, because, wherever there's a truth, there's going to be three false realities. But really quick, folks, before we get into things here, Tar River Arms, America's first virtual gun store, making it easier and more comfortable than ever to purchase your firearms online. Modernizing online firearm sales to accommodate the online generation. Weekly specials that eliminate shipping and broker fees. You order, you pick up, no additional fees. Great guns, great prices, and great service. Veteran-owned, veteran-run. Visit their site, traguns.com. traguns.com. Now, folks, this here is part 2 with my brother, Robert Bauer. Robert, the voice Bauer. You know what I'm talking about, brother?
When it needs to be said.
I'm telling you, folks, we are going to challenge your thoughts. We're going to challenge your thinking. We're going into different realms that we don't hear talked about on a lot of different shows. The first part, if you want to watch the program, what you need to do is go to my YouTube channel, search me on YouTube, or you can just go to my website, streamingtalkradio.com. And my YouTube link is right there. And I actually created a playlist just strictly for Mr. Bauer. And you should very much listen to the first episode, because the episode was titled Informatica, in regards to informatification. I'm getting that crap down. I practiced all night to say that, so I won't screw it up here today.
You got it.
But listen to that first episode, because this is going to be a progression. And as we progress in this conversation, at least once a week, you're going to see Bauer, if not twice a week, as we go down this path And it's like a tree that's growing, because as we bloom, there's going to be multiple different branches in regards to information, informatica. And basically, what I do is I hand the microphone over to Mr. Bauer, and he breaks this down. And again, you got to put on your thinking caps, because I just, Mr. Bauer is a very intelligent man, and he breaks it down in a way that you will not hear it in any other way. And I say that respectfully, Robert. Um, I just, we got to challenge their thoughts here, bro. So let's start. Give people, everybody, like a 2-minute recap of what we started with the last show, and then just work your way right into it, bro.
Sounds good. And having a recap is what we will do on each one of them, because they do tie into one another, and there is a linear, logical flow. Even though, basically what we're doing here is we're doing noggin runs and a little noggin jogging, and we put some thought into it and say, okay, well, let's see where this goes, because there are essential empirical data points that are really important in the way that people look at the information they're presented with. And so what we did in the first part was to establish the fact that there has been a linear progression throughout time of the way in which content has been assembled and the way it's been put together and transmuted and transformed over time. We started with the idea that from what we know of the historical record, and there's plenty of rabbit holes around just that topic itself, but we know that the data we have today, there was, stones, there was people wrote on rocks, and even some geopolymer type construction around some of the various civilizations and architecture around the world. And what they did is they took information and they symbolized the information. That symbology became languages. The languages were then, carved into stones and clay tablets in the form of cuneiform, and then hieroglyphics. And then as time progressed, there was animal skins and papyrus, and the media changed. But the information, not only for the most part stayed the same, but it was expounded upon. And then as we move forward through time, you get up to Gutenberg, and now you have the replication of this information. Prior to Gutenberg and being able to create books, there was essentially 1 or 2 copies of whatever the information was. If it was on a stone temple somewhere, you had to go to the temple to read it. Once you had skins, you started to have, 1 or 2 copies. You had papyrus, you had maybe a few more scrolls and so forth. And then you get to Gutenberg, and all of a sudden you've got paper, and you've got the ability to replicate mass quantities of this information. And because of that, you also had, again, a growth and an expansion of the information that was being written about. So now, once you get to Gutenberg, this proliferation of information starts becoming more widely available. It starts having individual and collective impacts on the various societies and the various cultures that would get access to this information. And thought expansion started to occur at a very rapid rate because of the access to the informatica that's within these books, within the writings. Then you move forward to around mid 1800s, and you get the telegraph, first version of being able to digitally or electronically at that time transmit data. So you didn't need a book, you didn't need a printing press, you didn't need a stone, you didn't need skins. You just needed the ability to tap on something with a certain pattern of information, and you can communicate that data across long distances. Then we move forward into the computing age in the mid 1900s. You get the transistor, you get silica, and you get now not only the ability to move this information very quickly, but you can also store a boatload of it on very small components. And that information now becomes accessible to whoever has access to that silica chip. I remember 5 1/4 floppies. back in the 70s and 80s, actually in the early 80s, and being able to have my first computer was a Compaq 286, Packard Bell 286, had 10 meg of storage and 640K of RAM. And it presented everything in what we called a monochrome screen. You either had amber or green, and it was basically text. Well, when I saw that information, it was like, wow, look at all the stuff I can get access to.
Right.
Getting my head wrapped around the technology of how this was happening was pretty profound, but it was a lot easier to get on there and play some games like
Right.
Space Invaders and all that.
Totally down with Space Invaders, by the way.
Oh man, Space Invaders was great.
Great.
So that was what we talked about, was how this information, this informatica throughout history has gone through these various forms of physical representation, and how each stage of the physical representation became more voluminous because of the medium of the time. What we're going to talk about today is what I'm calling the content continuum. And it's the next logical step of how these different phases of information storage and access has enabled this continuum of content that has got us to where we are today, with literally any information you want, anything you can think of, is basically available to you. And there's I'm working on an audio book about exponential change and leading that change. And I'm just going to read a little piece in here about this because I think it's very appropriate for what we're talking about here.
All right.
So it says, thanks to social media, information travels instantly without borders. People from different cultures and corners of the world can collaborate using software tools, and they can reach conclusions that are more thought out and elaborate than previously possible. Watching the world premiere of a film while you're sitting comfortably on your sofa is no longer a problem. You can play video games online with someone on the other side of the planet, or, and this is the important part, acquire specific high-quality knowledge without having to attend university. Now, the reason that this is important, and I think that I'm going to take a little side branch here, because you guys in the show last night, as you were talking about the different aspects of secret information being revealed.
Right.
And how that information is then pushed out in the way that people take it either in context or out of context and then wrap themselves around it. We had talked previously about the difference between, and this is on part one, we talked about the difference between the group of experts and the group of amateurs, and how there's this battle in the social fabric of the experts saying, well, you can't know something, you can't have a valid opinion on that because you're not accredited, you're not institutionalized, if you will, right? So therefore, your opinion on something is not to be taken seriously. And I'm going to try to draw an analogy here, and I'm going to put you right in the middle of it.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Let's do this. I'm excited.
So one of the things that we see going out on the social fabric today is this whole dystopia of this expert versus amateur, professional versus an initiate, right? They're not an adept yet. They're just an initiate. They've gotten into it, but they still don't know what they're doing. Let's talk about, let's relate it to our current politics for a second. On one side, you've got the whole Trump phenomenon, right?
Right.
You've got a guy who is a billionaire businessman, zero political experience whatsoever. And he came in the room, knocked all the stuff off the table, made a mess, and called in his own crew and said, I'm going to reset the table, and this is what we're going to eat. And I know you guys like Big Macs and Burger King,
Right.
Completely out of the norm. Not an expert move considered by the experts. In fact, during the election and up to the election, all the pundits and the experts were calling it one way. Boy, did they get it wrong.
Sure did.
Right?
Yep.
And the whole time I'm watching it, I'm looking at these rallies and these thousands of people, and I'm looking at the enthusiasm and just the mindset. And I'm thinking, these experts are missing what's going on here. They're not paying attention. They're trying to call it within their, what we talked about on the first part, their little information box.
Right. Yep.
They have no ability to go noggin jogging, none whatsoever.
Noggin jogging. Is that a Bauer word or is that?
It's a little thing that I
All
do
right.
when, I mean, I was talking about last time, my marbles.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
I get those little nugget notices.
Yep.
Yeah, when I go on a thought run, it's a noggin jogging.
Noggin jogging.
So you got that dynamic on one side. On the other side, you have this phenomenon known as AOC, right? And so here's a bartender that is coming in and creating a lot of noise, saying a lot of things, getting a lot of attention.
Kind of want to slap her, but go ahead.
She's no expert either.
No, she's not.
Right?
Right.
But she's got the attention. She's getting the people to talk. Okay. So neither one of them are experts. Both of them are now, at this point, the predominant ideological sides, and they are essentially controlling the discourse.
Sure are.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, here's where you come in.
Oh. We got 1:20.
Here we go.
Oh boy.
This phenomenon that we just talked about is a perfect example of how people who are not experts can make a difference. When you don't have subject matter domain expertise or some siloed, stamped piece of institutionalized knowledge, you can still make a difference. And what you do, and that's because the only way that happens is because you have an open mind. So when you started off saying you're going to make me smart or feel stupid, dude, you are right where you need to be in order to be either one, but most importantly, to be smart.
All right, bro. I was a little nervous there for a second.
You hear what I'm saying?
Dude, I'm totally with you, man. I am totally with you. And then so when you said that, and then you started talking about Facebook, I'm like, oh God, I'm screwed. I'm totally screwed. But it's a valid point because you look at Ocasio, you look at Donald Trump, the Trump effect, the Ocasio effect. I want to slap the lady in the face effect. I want to slap Trump sometimes in the face, but they are completely out of what we have been indoctrinated to believe is the norm. And it's the people that are outside of that norm, like you just said, are the ones that are truly going to make that difference. If people like you, people like me, people that listen to this show, it's very powerful stuff, brother. I am with this conversation so far, 100%. I'm feeling pretty damn smart. Folks,
here comes the second half.
Right here on the program, part 2 with Informatica with our brother, our friend, Mr. Robert Bauer. This is stemming from the first part. You got to go to my YouTube channel. You got to watch part 1. But you're listening to me, the emotional meatball, the clown punisher, right here on the Situation Room, right here on Mojo 50 Radio. Visit their website, mojo50.com, and of course, streamingtalkradio.com. When we come back on the other side, folks, this conversation continues. Get your pen and paper, folks, because there's going to be notes to take. Stand by. Bada boom, brother. You had me freaking nervous there, Bauer. You had me nervous, man. When you start incorporating me in there, I get nervous. I go down a lot of rabbit holes, bro. I didn't know where we were gonna go with that one.
Well, you see, this is one of the things.
By the way, before I forget, in regards to what we're talking
about. In fact, the majority of experts on any given discipline are proven wrong most of the time. Always put it into a proper context. And, I was hesitating a little bit drawing you into this with that analogy. Always put it into place.
Well, dude, I'll tell you to kind of support what you're saying. I work with some brilliant engineers. Right.
And when you realize that experts aren't all that they think they are.
Bada boom, brother. You had me freaking nervous there, Bauer. You had me nervous, man. When you start incorporating me in there, I get nervous. You know, I go down a lot of rabbit holes, bro. I didn't know where we were gonna go with that one.
Well, you see, this is one of the things that I think is really important. People have to put experts and amateurs in the proper context.
Right.
And when you realize that experts aren't all that they think they are, right? In fact, the majority of experts on any given discipline are proven wrong most of the time, or more times than not. And it's because they, from my perspective, what they do is they get into their little silo, and then that's where they stay.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
It's their safe knowledge place.
Well, dude, I'll tell you to kind of support what you're saying. I work with some brilliant engineers, but they lack the most common sense that I've ever in my life have ever seen in my. I mean, they can build a machine, but they sure as hell do not have the quality to be able to communicate to the people that are actually putting that machine together.
Right, and it's like we said on the first part. You got to remember, whenever you think about expertise and knowledge, you can't discount it, because there is something that's been developed and put together to get to that point.
Right.
But you got to remember that amateurs built the Ark and professionals built the Titanic.
Dude, I love that. I love how you put that. And for the record, go ahead.
Yeah, you have to always put it into a proper context. And I was hesitating a little bit drawing you into this with that analogy, but I think that it fits very well with the political discourse that you have with Scotty and some of the other guests and things you guys talk about. Because a lot of times people look to those that they're listening to as giving them some kind of guidance or information. And that's very important. But it's like you've said a number of times, like, I'm not even sure what you're talking about. That's the best place to start.
Right. And I don't want to give anything to anybody as fact. All I'm trying to do is to awaken the beast and encourage people to go out and understand the world through their own eyes. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Exactly.
All right, brother, here we go. By the way, for the record, I'm never eating beef jerky again. Just want to point that out. I ate a whole family-sized bag of that and a half a bag of jelly beans at the same time, and I'm paying the freaking price. All right, so thank you for listening about that. All right, there's information that people probably didn't need to know. So here we go. 5, 4, 3. Oh, yes, folks, just like Miss Audrey just put in that chat room, hashtag that baseline, though. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the second segment of Rocky Stucci's Situation Room right here on Mojo 50 Radio. Do not forget to visit their site, mojo50.com, and, of course, visit my site, streamingtalkradio.com. All the links you need. I'll get Bauer's links on there. If you want to donate, that link's on there. The YouTube channel, the Mojo stuff, we're going to put all the Odyssey information on there. Everything you need to know, streamingtalkradio.com. And I don't want to waste a lot of time here, so let's get this going. Atrantil, ever bloat after eating, get abdominal distension, tightness, feel tired and heavy after eating a meal, have unpredictable bathroom habits, which you will get if you eat a full bag of beef jerky. Then what you want to do is you want to get a Atrantil. When you buy 90 capsule box, it's normally $40, $39.95. When you buy 3 with our coupon code, you get 3-month supply of bloating and digestive relief for only $99. All you need to do is go to lovemytummy.com/mojo. lovemytummy.com/mojo. On the program today, my personal friend, my brother, Mr. Bauer, Robert Bauer. And this is a part 2 of Informatica. Again, you got to watch part 1. Go to my YouTube channel, watch the video there. And this is going to be a continuing series. So basically what I do, Mr. Bauer already has all this. I mean, the dude has a freaking whiteboard. You know what I'm saying? He has a freaking whiteboard. So that's big business to me, man. So basically what I do is I hand the microphone over to him. I encourage everybody put your thinking caps on, get your pad and paper, and take notes. And he is always available, especially in the chats during these programs, to answer any questions that you have, because I know Mr. Bauer, he's a critical thinker and he wants to spark conversation. So Mr. Bauer, the microphone is yours.
Thank you, my brother.
All right.
Let's see. Let me try to wrap a framework around this so that people can get an idea and a sense of not only where we went in part one, where we're going to go in part two, but then in the next following parts, there's a tie-in to the informatica itself, because the idea is that informatica is the content, informatification is what's done with that content. And in the first part, we talked about the transformation of the media that's transported the information, if you will, over time. And what we're going to talk about now in the second part is what I'm calling the content continuum. Because now we're at a point where the content is being amassed across different subject matter domains, different ideas, everything from theology to philosophy to physics, astronomy, and everything in between. Mm-hmm. And what's happening now is there is this continuum of this content that has come throughout the ages. In fact, even though something was on a stone in cuneiform or written in symbology on a temple somewhere, that data, a lot of that data is still not understood. A lot of the information that's been scrawled on skins and on papyrus and so forth is still being analyzed. They're still trying to decipher, what does it mean? What were they trying to communicate? In some ways, the languages themselves are completely unknown. No one knows at this point what it was that they were communicating, who the people were that came up with the symbology and the language that they have discovered.
Right.
And I think that there's a boatload more that's not only still underground or hidden in plain sight in some ways, but there's a lot of information that's available off the coasts of various continents. People don't realize that during the last ice age, at the end of the last ice age, the sea level were about 300 to 400 feet lower than they are today.
Wow.
And if you think about that, off the coast of Dwarka, Yonaguni, off of Cuba, there are
300 to 400 feet
lower than they are today.
Wow, that's crazy.
So if you think about that, if you look at Google Earth and you look at the Bimini plate that extends off of Florida out into the Atlantic, it's a huge shelf that goes hundreds of miles out from the current coast and then drops off into the abyss. Well, there's all kinds of Daryl Mikolos is a treasure hunter, essentially. Mm-hmm. He has a show on, I think it's on History Channel, called Cooper's Treasure. And it's a fascinating story because it's about Gordon Cooper, the astronaut, back in the Gemini series. As he was making his orbits around the planet, he was taking pictures of all of whatever he could around Bimini and around Nassau and all the islands in the Caribbean, because he had a sense that there was buried treasure out there. So the extensive amount of documentation that he did on his flights was passed on to Daryl Mikolos. Last season, at the end of the last season, they were in one of those submersibles. They went off of one of these edges and were down in 300 or 400 feet, looking at the side of this underwater cliff. And they found protrusions coming out that were obviously not natural. So I'm assuming that at this point they've already done, in fact, Cliff Dunning of not ancient astronauts, ancient history, has had him on and done a few interviews, and it's fascinating. I think that we're going to find more information like that in these underwater cities and civilizations that until we went down and had the technology to take a look at it, people didn't know was there.
Maybe we'll find Atlantis.
Well, we can go into that rabbit hole as well.
Yeah.
Mauritania has come up recently in the Rajat structure. But my point is that there's a lot of data that is, we have data today, We have a lot of data that has not been found, and we're going to continue to find more data. So the content continuum is continually being fed. There's more data coming in on a regular basis, and it's starting to explode in ways that I don't think people fully appreciate yet. That information and the way that it is expressed has some commonalities in it. When you go back to the original information that was written again on the stones and skins and so forth, there was a specific type of content that was recorded. And that information spanned a number of different disciplines. But most importantly, you had symbologies, you had language, and you had the content within it. Those symbologies and that language express different ideas. What is some of the most, and it's fascinating to watch the discourse around this, but one of the most important and consistent pieces of the content in the continuum is astronomy. Astronomy, also in the form of astrology. Mm. Now, when you think about it today, you have Western astrology, you have Vedic astrology, which is extremely ancient. But when you get into the old writings on the walls of the temples and on the cuneiform, these guys were tracking stuff that was like, how do you track that? How do you know that there's a precession? How do you know that when Venus rises at this time of year, there's going to be these types of potential events? What they were doing was cataloging energetic activities that occurred when certain things were in certain positions at certain times.
So do they just have people every single night just literally just stare up?
How else would you do it?
I don't know.
Except, well, the only other, well, not the only other, but the most prominent way in which that information was probably gathered and collected, categorized, analyzed, and so forth, was with some help from other people that probably weren't necessarily indigenous, or maybe they were indigenous, but maybe just more advanced than we are, right? Now, the Sumerians, for example, in their writings, they knew all about all the planets. They knew Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Pluto. They knew them all.
And when did the Sumerians date back to?
We're talking around 3,000 to 4,000 BC.
And they knew of our planets.
They knew of our planets.
That's just crazy.
Now, how did they get that information? These guys were writing on stone, right?
Right.
Well, according to their own story, they were given that information by the Anunnaki, who came from Nibiru, who told this whole cosmological story of the way that the solar system and Earth and humans were formed.
That's deep.
Now, if you take, I like to say, it's a great noggin, joggin, and thought run, which is, if you look at myth as history and history as myth, all kinds of things start becoming very much more interesting. And you start finding much more interesting, plausible explanations for some of the observations that we make. And that goes back to the whole expert versus amateur thing, right? So if you look at, for example, and we'll just stay on astronomy and astrology for a second. First of all, you can't have astrology without astronomy. When you look at, because you have to look at the planets, you have to look at the cosmos, you have to see the moon, the sun, and all of the different heavenly bodies that do what they do. Well, if those bodies are energetic in the sense of that's what our universe is made up, it's consciousness and energy, in my opinion, that's where everything starts and ends.
I agree.
Everything in between is the individual manifestation of that energy and that consciousness as it manifests.
Can I just intervene here really quick?
Yeah.
Hold that thought. If planet Earth never existed and the human physical species never existed, would our conscious energy still exist in the universe?
In my opinion, yes.
Okay.
I think that the biological manifestation of the human sapien species as we know it now, and I think that the Earth and all of that are conscious, and this kind of goes into the whole theological side of it. when you read the Bible, as Brother Roberts has been going through his.
Jesus, has he?
Oh man, and he's got some amazingly profound information and observations. But when you read just the literal word, it says, essentially God spoke the word, and the word was God, and poof, everything happened.
Yeah, bada boom.
Well, sounds like consciousness and energy to me.
Right. Sure. Okay.
Right.
All right. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So let's just try to use this astrological comparison. Back in the Enlightenment period, in the 1500s through about 1800s, when you had the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, back then there wasn't, when you had philosophy, but science was incorporated into philosophy. You had astrology, which became astronomy. You had alchemy, which became chemistry, right? So there was a change. There was an attempted break in the content continuum from a theological wrapper around the information to a logical, more real world, tangible expression of whatever that knowledge set was. So again, astrology was, and it's funny because you hear people going off and, yeah, what's your sign? And, astrology is a bunch of, love, light, and cluelessness. There is an essence from which it was born, which is based on thousands of years of observations. The Egyptians, I mean, the ancient civilizations, they didn't do squat on some type of major cultural event, whether it was a war or building something or whatever it might have been, without the court astrologers coming in and being quizzed, say, okay, what do you see? Well, Mars is in retrograde and Jupiter is now passing conjunction with Venus. Probably not a good time to do it.
Right.
Okay. Now, the people, the rulers that were commanding the resources and the events and so forth, they didn't call these guys in because they were flipping a coin. They called them in because there was historical data that said that this content is worthy of consideration. And that in and of itself is something that is profound. I mean, cultures lived and thrived and died by this information. So in the continuum of content, there are things that are extremely profound and yet very subtle. I mean, we just went through a whole March where there was a Mercury retrograde. And I've been following this stuff for as long as I can remember being aware of it. And I can tell you, there are definitely influences. There's definitely things. People can say, well, that's because you're thinking about it. You're putting that energy into it.
Right.
Okay, well, you just validated my point then. if your consciousness has energy, and because you're thinking about it, you manifest it. Okay. Now, what's to say that whoever or whatever created the materium that we exist in isn't made up of the same thing? I mean, again, going back to at least the Christian theology, let us make God or man in our image, us and our, plural, man, singular. Apparently, we have some characteristics of those who brought us forth into being. My only complaint is I'd like to have some of that invisibility stuff they got.
Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah, bro. I want to be invisible.
They left that out of the equation. It's like, dude, it'd be really nice to, be able to just go.
Dude, if I could be invisible, if that would be one of my superpowers, I would go to California.
Teleportation.
How you doing?
So, this little rant was about trying to understand some of the subtle, important components of the way that the informatica exists, the way it has been transformed and transmuted over time into where we are today. All of this information, the known and the unknown, the new and the old, is available to us now in a way that is never before, from what we can understand, has never been available in this totality. And that's where the technology we'll get into after the next episode. We're going to That one will be again on the message in the medium.
Mm.
And I'm introducing a new combo word in that, and the medium is spelled Mediam.
Is that a Bauerism?
I reached up, pulled it out, and I said, okay, well, let's use that.
Boom, bro. I like it. I'm coming up with my
So,
own new words too.
well, sometimes as time goes on, you have to have some way to redefine
Yeah.
or be more inclusive in what it is you're talking about, and the idea there is that media is Media, right? Medium, Medium, okay, and medium in the sense of the media itself, the con, what it is that the media is contained within. So whether it's a chip or it's a tape or it's a book. So what I'm trying to do with this word is combine the media being the content into the medium of how it's contained and how it's accessed. So it's a blend of the two.
So
And I think, go ahead.
I got a question for you. When you said that, I actually wrote it down just in case. But so over all these centuries for human mankind, very Christian, right? We were very Christian for hundreds and hundreds of years, and that was kind of how we dictated our lands. That was our source of information to create our ideological views and how we lived our life, how we walked on the sands, right?
Hmm.
So in regards to information and the amount of information that we experience today in modern times, is information the new religion? Okay,
It's an
so
interesting question.
while you're digesting that, we have noticed a drop in Christianity because in a lot of Christian cultures we have technology. Now, if you go to the Middle East or Africa, they're still very radicalized in their religious ideologies. In fact, their religion runs and dictates their governments. A lot of those countries do not get the information that we have access to. There's some places that you can't even get a tablet. You can't even study math or science. You got to study a Quran. In Western cultures, very Christian cultures, we have all these different sources and boxes of information, and we see a decrease in religion. And that's kind of hence the question, is information the new religion?
I would hope not. I would rather see, at least from my perspective, that information is the new freedom.
Is it?
Well, it certainly can be.
It almost
But
seems like we're becoming entrapped into a manifested reality with the power of information.
well, and that's why the next part is going to be the message in the medium, because there is most definitely a concerted effort to manipulate the data in a way that that changes and influences the way that people think and feel, because that's if information is what generates your own thoughts,
Mhm.
your own feelings, your observations, and all of those things turn into the physical actions that you do as a result of knowing whatever it is that you know. Um, your example of the cultures that are ruled by a theology, a belief system, and how you that is controlled versus where we are in the Western side of we've got so much information now, you're not sure what to believe, right?
Right.
So people, because of a proliferation of information, it's not only liberating, but it can also be simultaneously constraining. And I think you see that in the two examples you're talking about. When you have people in different cultures that they don't have any access to information, the only information they have is what they're given. There's going to be obviously some very strong issues. There's going to be a lot more control.
Hmm.
But when the information is widely available, now the challenge for those who were trying to control the narrative is, okay, we got to get ahead of this. How do we get ahead of climate change? How do we get ahead of immigration? How do we get ahead of the political narrative? And this goes back to my point in the end of the first segment. When you have experts and you have amateurs, you have got one hell of a game about to be played.
Right.
especially now in our current culture and society. You have the opportunity now to where people like Trump versus what's her name? AOC.
Yeah. Freak,
You've got
whatever.
you've got two complete amateurs standing at the pillar at the top of the mountain in the political discourse, and they are controlling or at least having a massive influence on the narrative. One of the things that I think is extremely powerful, and this might be a good place to kind of wrap this piece up, is the whole idea of what an amateur can do in an area of expertise that they have very little experience and knowledge in.
Do you think that's part of a plan?
I think it can be. I think some of it may be planned. I think some of it is organic.
Okay.
All right. I think some of it just is kind of born out of the state of what's going on and the conflagration of everything into this confluence of ideas and battles of wit and wisdom. But one of the things that I think is extremely important that I don't think people realize is actually going on. Let's take Trump, for example, with his latest, who is it? Kirstjen Nielsen got axed, the Homeland Security.
Yep.
Right. Well, the pundits and the people on the ideology that's opposite of Trump and the right, they look at all of these people that's been come and go out of cabinets, out of different leadership positions and different agencies, and they say, yeah, it's just a big cluster, right? This guy doesn't know what he's doing, right? Well, let's draw an analogy. Let's say that you're watching the Final Four, right? What do you have? You got a coach and you got teams. On those teams, you have members, you have players, right? What does a coach do? A coach says, here's the right combination for what I see going on right now. Let's see how it goes. Oh, well, we got some problems here. Let's swap it out a little bit. Let's change up the dynamic so that we can see if we can collectively get a different outcome. Sometimes when you do that, you throw a wild card in because you don't know. You're guessing. You're pulling it out of your posterior orifice and you're saying, let's see what happens. Mm-hmm. I think when you think about it, being someone who's been a solopreneur and an entrepreneur and done the corporate life, when I've seen teams of people try to make some kind of product or inroads or change a narrative or a dynamic within a market, that's exactly what you do. You put together the best team of people you can find, you go along, and as things either work or they don't, you change out people. Now, Trump, he's got a flair of a personality, and he just does it like he sees it. He's a businessman in politics. And as much as people don't realize, the U.S. government may not be a business, but by God, it sure is one. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. It should be run like a business.
Sure should. In
my opinion, more so than not. So you got Trump out there throwing these, what appear to be to people who are not, looking at it deeply enough, like some kind of random off the wall orange hair blowing in the wind kind of stuff. And that seems chaotic. But out of chaos comes order.
Right.
You're not going to know
Boom.
Unless you try.
Out of chaos comes order.
Right. And the same thing happens over on the AOC side, on the other side of the ideology. They're throwing things out on the table. And as crazy as a lot of it sounds, some of it doesn't make too much sense. Some of it, okay, I could see where that might go. But for the most part, what both sides are doing from an amateur perspective is they're shaking up the narrative. They're throwing things on the table, and they're getting people to talk about those subjects. I think the whole wall issue back at the beginning of the year, at the end of the day, you had people calling one side or the other stupid or not informed and whatever it might have been. But what happened? Everybody was talking about it.
Everybody's talking about it.
Right? So when you get everybody talking, that's the first step. When you start with an ideology that's in a silo and you say, this is it and nothing else works, and you don't let anybody else have discourse, then time itself and the proliferation and ubiquity of information and the access to it is going to sort itself out because people are now engaged.
Right.
They're now talking about the subject. So to me, that's one of the most important things that we're seeing right now in the informatification of informatica, and how that message within the medium is generating what we're about to see, which would be the fourth part, which we're calling next text.
Gee, you got all these names for all these programs already. Hey, Bauer, tell everybody how they can contact you. We just got about a minute and a half total time left.
All right. Well, thank you very much, brother.
We love having you, man. We love having you.
This is so much fun. I mean, this is just that open discourse of let's throw some ideas out on the table and see what happens.
Absolutely.
And that's where knowledge begins.
That's right.
In my opinion. Bauer.media is my voiceover and my Nextcast site. You can hear some of the voice work and so forth that I do there, as well as the Nextcast, which Brother Rocky's going to be on here in a few weeks.
How you doing? Forget about it.
Can't wait for that one.
Oh boy, it's going to be trouble.
And then Intuitive Sound, INTUITIVE sound.com is where most of my audio work in the form of sound and music is as well. And then News Treks, which is on a Facebook page, where I just kind of put some random things out there that I think are worthy of consideration, or at least of note, as you have your own nugget notices throughout the day.
Right.
There's all kinds of stuff that happens that people should, maybe at least it's out there, if not be aware of.
Folks, Robert Bauer, not the last time you will see him. As a matter of fact, maybe this week again you'll see him, but you'll definitely see him next week. Robert Bauer, I love the hell out of you, brother. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everybody, for watching the Situation Room with me, the emotional meatball, Rocky Stucci. Mojo 50 Radio. Until tomorrow night, folks, much love, much respect. And remember, rule number one, don't take shit from anybody. Good night, everybody.